You are going to rock the year, and we're going to help you do that here at the Elite Recruiter Podcast. We have the Rock the Year event, the Recruiting Growth Summit, kicking off on March 10th. It is going to be awesome. We're going to be focusing on mindset. We're going to be focusing on sourcing. We're going to be focusing on AI. We're going to be focusing on operations and high performance and BD and sales. Every single thing that you need as a recruiter to make sure that you can rock 2025 and make it the year of abundance. Make it the year that works for you. Make it the year that you crush every single one of your dreams. Let's go get it. Coming up on this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast.
I think the biggest myth is thinking things are going to stay the same. People think, well, I've got a black book of contacts. I know them. They know me. I'm safe. I'm like, based on what? Everything comes to me through this. So I was like, what if I started teaching people this? And I could teach it without anyone, just me, and my business partner could sell it. So in the Easter weekend of 2020, when everyone was like, where the hell is the world going? I'm in a box room in my old flat in London, building this training program. And then I launched it and we signed 165 recruitment businesses up in 3.5 months.
Welcome to the Elite Recruiter Podcast with your host, Benjamin Mena, where we focus on what it takes to win in the recruiting game. We cover it all from sales, marketing, mindset, money, leadership, and placements.
I am so excited about this episode of the Elite Recruiter Podcast because the recruiting industry is changing and there's a myth that is holding recruiters back. We're going to talk about that myth. We're going to talk about why you need to break through these myths and like all these things that we've known for so long. The world's changing fast. And that's why I have one of the biggest experts over in the UK, Sean Anderson, sharing with me, probably one of the biggest recruiting podcasts out there. He has trained over 7,000 recruiters and over 600 agencies about how you can make more money. And we're going to talk about what's working. We're going to talk about what's not working. We're going to talk about the differences between UK recruiters and why they're crushing it compared to sometimes us US recruiters. But we're going to really start breaking some myths. So Sean, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Just thanks for the invite. It's good to be. It's weird being on the other side of the mic. It's normally me doing the talking, doing the questioning.
I say the same thing. I like to stay behind the scenes and just ask some good questions and shut up and get out of the way. And so this time I get to ask you the questions. But real quick and many people in the UK know about you, but not as many people in the US know about you.
Yeah.
Quick 30-second intro.
Yeah, I think you did it well. I mean, I launched Hoxo 8 years ago with a vision to change the way recruiters worked, really. I believed there was a change coming even back in 2017. And, the way in which everything was just phone-based and outbound, I thought would change. And in that time, I've now worked with over, 7,000 recruiters. I've built my own brand on LinkedIn to over 1 million views a month, and every client comes inbound, and I teach clients how to do the same thing. How do they become a key person of influence in their niche, but not just build vanity metrics, but turn it into revenue.
And I think that's a big thing a lot of recruiters miss when they're starting to talk about things and do stuff online. It's like, hey, look how many clicks I got. No, is the clicks turning to revenue?
Yeah.
Well, real quick, I know you've been training for a while, but how did you even get started in this wonderful world of recruiting?
How did I get started?
Yeah.
I was a teacher in the UK in 2010, and I went traveling to Australia. And there's 2 ways you could learn to be a teacher in the UK. The way I did was not valid in Australia. So there was a conversion price to spend money. And I was 24 years old. I was like, I'm not paying that. So I met a lot of English and Irish guys in a bar one night, and they're all in recruitment. And that was what happened. So the Australian market is just dominated by British and Irish recruiters. And I joined Randstad, the second biggest firm in the world. I did a 1.5 years there. Then I moved to London. I spent 5.5 years in a really cool boutique firm where I was their top performer, and then got to a point where I was about to launch my own agency. So Hoxo was originally a recruitment company that I was planning for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
I changed the plan at the last minute.
Okay, so real quick, you started recruiting just a conversation at the bar.
Pretty much, yeah. I had a friend who had just landed we were traveling together, but he went on a different route. He ended up in Bali and I ended up in Singapore. And then when he landed in Melbourne, he was already interviewing with recruitment. And I was kind of like, I don't know. When it's your friend, I didn't really take much notice of what he was doing. And then he was telling us about it. And we literally saw these guys on a table next to us, all in suits, local to from the UK. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Recruitment. Everyone was in recruitment. I was like, well, what the fuck is this? I've got to think about it. And then I literally just recruited myself. I phoned around the city of Melbourne and blagged my way through and got myself a job.
That's phenomenal. That's awesome. So you were actually looking at launching your own recruiting firm. Like what kind of like shifted you into training?
I moved into marketing first. So the original Hoxo was a marketing agency, like a classic traditional digital marketing agency. But the reason I did that, long story short, 2016 was my final year in an agency. And I was their top billing recruiter. I'd done about a third of the business revenue on my own as a contract recruiter. I built the contract division up to the business, which was generating majority of the GP in the company. And I've started planning with my best mate. We were going to launch Hoxo, the recruitment company. This was a 2-year plan. So 2015, 2016 was a plan. In 2016, when it became time to really get on with the move, I found myself, I'll be honest, I was a bit burnt out. The kind of daily grind of how we were working. We were picking up the phone and ringing hiring managers and trying to book meetings, and it was just physical. Everything was so manual, so dated. And then I'm listening to podcasts like this, but in 2015, 2016, and I'm like, I'm learning from some gurus all over the world. But yeah, I'm making calls to hiring managers in the morning and trying to hit 10 before 10 a.m. I was like, there's got to be a way I could generate content. And then I started following people like Stephen Bartlett and Gary Vaynerchuk and Casey Neistat and Tony Robbins and all these people that were like having huge influence online. And I had this brainwave that I could be a recruitment business owner with like the biggest brand in the market so I'm burnt out from the repetitive nature of the outbound role, even though I had a great client base and, I wasn't all outbound, but there was still a lot of that. There was also my non-compete in my contract meant that I couldn't ring anyone for the first 6 months that I knew. So I'm like, there's nothing in here that says I can't be seen or heard or watched or viewed or listened to. So I was like, there's zero around my content plan here. So I had this vision, but I didn't know what I was doing. Like I'd never done any content at this point. So I quit my job with the plan of launching a recruitment company. And in the 4 weeks of garden leave where I can't even do any work, I recruited a marketer that I knew and I told him about what I wanted to do. I bought a lot of online training programs. So I was learning myself. And then I started ringing recruitment businesses that I kind of familiar with. I had friends who knew, and I signed 4 people up to a contract that I didn't even know what I was going to do to deliver it, but they believed in me. So I was like, fuck, I've got something here. And I realized that no one in recruitment internationally was doing this in 2016. No one. Like there was no personal brands. There was no content plans. There was nothing. And I was like, I could either build one business for me and just be the big fish in a small pond, or I could try and impact the industry. And genuinely, I saw this like global scale of everywhere in the world was dominated by British and Irish recruiters who needed a competitive edge that all worked on the phone and had no experience in marketing. So I thought, fuck it, I'm going to try building something. And in 6 months, if it doesn't work, I'll just go back to what I know and I'll do what I'm good at. And the business grew. And so for the first 3 years, going into the pandemic, we were a physical digital agency. But I was the face. I was the brand. I was getting all the views. I was getting all the leads. I was selling. And we were signing people up to retain contracts where we would effectively outsource your marketing to my team. And that model is not a good model. Like it wasn't fun. It was stressful. It was difficult. I'd never ran a marketing agency in my life. So there was loads of problems with it. We made good money. We delighted some customers. We didn't do great things across the board every time. And got to the pandemic and I was sat there thinking, everyone said that, marketing is going to be the first cost that gets cut. And I thought, well, I don't actually do any of the work. Me and my business partner were the front end sales engine and we're not marketing experts at this point. We'd had copywriters and designers and account managers and all these people in our team. What I did know is I was getting 1 million views a month on LinkedIn. And I had a really cool strategy that I documented in my old teacher days. I'd written everything down. I was planning. I was organized. I was like, everything comes to me through this. So I was like, what if I started teaching people this? And I could teach it without anyone, just me. And my business partner could sell it. And so in the Easter weekend of 2020, when everyone was like, where the hell is the world going? I'm in a box room in my old flat in London building this training program. And then I launched it and we signed 165 recruitment businesses up in 3.5 months onto this program, which literally catapulted cash flow. The actual agency survived quite well, in fact. That kind of dipped and then grew again. And so we ended up, at the end of 2020, we had this weird business where we had the original business and I had this second business growing alongside it, which was training. One was physical done for you services and one was just training. It's a long-winded answer to your question, but so it's actually only been since the pandemic, but then over the last few years, I've basically been unwinding the original agency I've been unwinding to the point where we don't do any of it anymore. So we're purely, I'd call us a personal brand and a branding consultancy for the recruitment industry. We're not a done for you service.
Talk about a shift and evolution right there.
Yeah, I think I've pivoted. What I've always done is I've felt something that's important to me that I think is needed. I then do it. If I succeed in it, people then typically want to come on the journey with me, and I can show other people how to do it. And I think I keep doing that in my career. But I feel like now we're in a really strong, we've been in the same seat for 5 years. People know us. We've worked with clients all over the world. We've got a great track record. Like, we're in a good position now. And we're now evolving with AI and everything, and, you know, making sure that we're not left behind in the next couple of years.
Like, with you able to kind of see the future, what is it, two times or three times already? And I know we've talked about AI in this podcast a lot, but like, where do you see the next 2 to 3 years?
I think it's going to be like so different. I think pre-pandemic, the world was a completely different place. And then post-pandemic, we saw, I think in 12 months, I saw more change than in 6 months, I saw more change than in the 3-4 years before. Because of I think AI is like an ongoing pandemic that isn't going anywhere. Like, it's coming fast and faster and faster, and we can't escape it. It's not like we're going to go, oh, we've got a vaccine, it's gone. It isn't happening. This is fucking coming. So apologies if I wasn't supposed to swear on this show.
You're good.
So I think the industry needs to embrace it rather than be scared of it, but realize where the human, you know, I don't think we're going to be replaced. I think we're just going to end up doing less of the job, but with the really high value bits, and we're going to cut out so much wastage and time. And I think it's going to be a really good thing, personally. I think it'll be a really positive thing. It's going to separate people who are open to change from people that want to stay the same.
And I mean, by the time this actually goes live, like, who knows what OpenAI is going to drop with a combination of like Operator and deep research in the last week. It's just insane what's happening.
Exactly.
Well, anyways, let's jump into recruiting. Let's focus on the recruiters. So, like, you've trained 7,000 recruiters, 600 agencies. Part of your plan is to really just add an additional 6 figures in 6 months. Yeah. And like, your focus most of the time is LinkedIn. Like, for recruiters,
or LinkedIn, yeah,
like, that aren't invested on LinkedIn, like, we'll say I am, like you are, why should they start now?
Well, LinkedIn has a monopoly in our industry right now. They are able to, you know, the spend on LinkedIn from the recruitment industry is just astronomical. Like, the outside of people, it's the biggest spend that a recruitment company will be their LinkedIn licenses if they've got, you know, a fair few people in the business. Companies are all invested heavily financially. They spend all their time on it. You know, I ask my customers, do you use LinkedIn in the background all day? The answer is yes. Do you check it on your mobile device before you start work? Yes. In the evening? Yes. Do you check it in bed? Most people say yes. I'm like, you'll end up getting divorced. Be careful. But the truth is, it's all encompassing. It's social media that's in our hand pockets, on our screens all day, every day. And our customers, the data proves that 50% of all like LinkedIn users actually attend the platform once a week. They don't all contribute, but they're there. So if you've got 10,000 connections on LinkedIn, like 5,000 are there every single week. They're going there. I think the role of a recruiter is to get attention. That's the primary role of a recruiter. All day, every day, you're trying to get attention. You're trying to get someone to answer the phone, someone to reply to an email, someone to reply to an email, someone to come back to you. You're always trying to get attention. That's it. That's the job, right? When you get the attention, you've then got to have the skills to do good things with it. But you've got to get the attention first. And then you've got all these people coming to a platform that you've connected to on a weekly basis. Like, why are they there? They're there to learn, to procrastinate, to engage, to develop their careers. They're not there for hot jobs necessarily, to be headhunted. They're not there to have sales spammy approaches, but they're there to interact. They're going there. They're there to consume. So I'm like, this didn't exist when most people that are probably listening to this got into the industry. It wasn't the same platform. It wasn't an opportunity, but now it is. You're spending all your money on there. You're spending your time. You've probably got thousands of connections. You've probably got thousands of niche connections that are relevant to the industry that you serve. What are you doing with it? Then how long do you need to look at that before you realize there's a gold mine sat in front of you?
I feel like most recruiters completely forget all the connections they have.
Incredible. I ask this question every time, right? Is it fair to say, looking at your LinkedIn network, your first degree network, there's hiring managers in there that have hired people in your space in the last 12 months that you didn't get any access to? And everyone I've ever asked says, yeah, that's fair. Are there candidates in there, perhaps top candidates, that moved jobs and didn't pick you as their recruiter? And yeah. Everyone says, yeah. It's like, well, that's the biggest problem. Everyone's spending money on LinkedIn Recruiter Pro licenses, thousands of dollars a year, sending out cold, spammy emails all day, every day, trying to hit everyone. But then they've sat there with these thousands of people that already know them, and they're not doing anything with it. It's just literally ridiculous. And it's so easy to tap into that, to get 6 figures in 6 months, which is our kind of like strap line. It's not difficult. It requires a plan. It requires a process, an application to that process, but it's not rocket science. But most people don't want to do it.
Okay, let's break this down. Like, somebody that's listening to this podcast, like, what kind of plan should they start putting into place to actually start tapping into that network, working the network to get to that 6 figures in 6 months?
Yeah, I mean, the 3 things that I always teach and on a high level explain is, 1, you should be growing the network all the time. You shouldn't stop at 5,000. Like, unless you've got a tiny market that everyone, which you won't. People overestimate their reach and their network and the people they know. You should always be looking to find, because there's always new hiring managers, people are always retiring, people are always getting promoted, there's always people coming in. You should be invested in that constantly. You should be working that network on a 1-to-1 and a 1-to-many scale. So 1-to-1 is you should be looking at the people that are interacting with you, followers, people engaging with your content, people viewing your profile. There's indicators everywhere, the people that are looking at you every day. But the 1-to-many strategy, which is where most people get it really wrong, is their content. They don't understand who they're talking to, why they're talking to them. But you want to be sharing sustainable value. You want people to think Ben is a really useful contact. Like, he's someone I'm really glad I'm connected to. That's the goal. Is that you want to be really useful. Most people think transaction. I've got a job. Can you help me? And all it is just milk the cow constantly. And it's like, that's not how it works. And then the final thing is, you've got to have a process to actually follow up and sell to the network using those tools. When you're creating all this engagement, 1-to-1, 1-to-many, like, are you going for the kill? Are you opening the door? People don't do it. They just don't do it. So they're leaving so much cash on the table, so much opportunity on the table. And they spend all their time banging on doors of people that don't know them, don't trust them, have no connection point. And they've got this massive repository of opportunity that they leave for another day.
When you say like they don't go for the kill, they miss that opportunity, like where are recruiters really screwing that up and how?
They're not seeing that, LinkedIn effectively you don't make money on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't do deals on LinkedIn. It doesn't work that way. LinkedIn is a vehicle to get people on the phone and get people in a meeting. So, on a really basic level, if people are interacting with you online, there's a good chance you could get a meeting out of those people. If someone's viewing your profile for the 3rd time, it's not that difficult to say, look, let's have a conversation here. Like, what do you want? Now, you don't want to speak to everyone. You've got to be selective with it. But if you're not looking at your brand and thinking, who are these people? And am I missing out on really cool candidates and clients? Then, more fool you.
Awesome. And I know you typically teach it. What is it? It's 20-10-5 is the methodology that you teach?
No, so it's something called the 3X system is the methodology. The 20-10-5 is one part of it. It's the engagement strategy, the 1-to-1 engagement strategy.
Okay, awesome. And real quick for everybody listening, what's that breakdown again? What does that exactly mean?
It's basically a framework to follow on a daily basis. 20 connections, 10 minutes of likes and comments, and 5 direct messages. Like, if you follow that in a 15-minute frame and you do that over and over again, like on a weekly basis, you'll have more phone calls booked in your diary than you can handle.
And for the listeners, and I know a few other guests have actually talked about the 20-10-5. I'm pretty sure Sean is the one that originated it.
Yeah, I made that up. Yeah.
So I was just trying to hey guys, this is the guy who came up with it.
Yeah. It's just something I was always doing. Like, again, everything I'm telling you is what I've done first, and then I've evolved it through clients' feedback, and people have done incredibly well. I've gone, maybe you should do it differently, and learned this, and so it's evolved, but it's essentially what I was doing in 2018, 2019 to build my business.
Talking about back in 2018 to now, I want to talk about some things that are working and that used to be working and aren't working. I also want to talk about some myths. What do you think is some of the things that's, old school recruiters like myself in the game almost 20 years, what do you think is a myth that's holding us back?
I think the biggest myth is thinking things are going to stay the same. So most people think I've got relationships, and I believe recruitment is a relationship game, but it's not necessarily just like an analog relationship, like a physical relationship game. So people think, I've got a black book of contacts. I know them. They know me. I'm safe. I'm like, based on what? There's new people every single day entering the market. There's competition trying to get in with those relationships every single day. There's people hitting online channels where those relationships are seeing them every single day. You're making that one phone call every 3 to 6 months and checking in. They're blowing you out of the water because they're being seen every single day, through social media, through channels, through AI, through different methods. So the way in which we can consistently engage people now is so much more powerful than back in the day. And when you're so busy as a recruiter and you haven't got much time because you're always working on different vacancies and things, you overestimate the reach of your relationships. And actually, what happens when these guys go? What happens when they retire? What happens when they move out of the sector? Like, the people who invest now in the future of recruitment are the ones that are going to still be performing in 3 years. Those that go, this is how I've always done it, this is how I'm going to carry on doing it. I genuinely don't think you're going to have the same marketplace in 2 to 3 years. And also, the jobs are going to change. So if your job changes, your clients' jobs are going to change. The candidates' jobs are going to change, and the tools that we have at our disposal, so do they. If you're not using those tools and investing in those tools and being part of it, then how can you truly understand what's changing in the markets for your clients as well? So it's like, you're right. I think you're either all in or you're all out. And there's so many people that are just sat thinking, nah, this is just noise. I'll be honest, I was probably a little bit like that 18 months ago. I think there's a middle ground. So there's the automate everything, use AI for everything. There's the don't automate anything, don't use AI for anything. And there's a middle ground where you've got to think, what are the goals? How can I make things slicker, more efficient? And how can I remain authentic? Because that's what it's about. It's about being authentic. You can do as much as you want online with social, with AI. You can write so much more content using AI, but it doesn't mean it's going to be good. It doesn't mean it sounds like you.
I know I was using a lot of AI content when ChatGPT first came out, but I give it like 2 months and I was like, I can pick it out.
You can
pick it out. Everybody.
All the emojis and things in the way like the overly dramatic headlines and things, you can see people are just, they've not written that.
I mean, think about this. Like, you run a recruiting firm, you have a team of recruiters. You're sitting there telling people to sit there and go do X, Y, Z, get more content online. But so often than not, I don't see the actual firm owners sharing like they should. Like, what is this mistake and how do they fix that?
Yeah. So basically that's what I mentioned before, that this is a top-down approach, not a bottom-up approach. People think, well, my team are younger than me. They use Instagram. They'll be better at this. They'll let them do it. Right. And it's complete nonsense, because ultimately, if you're the recruiting firm leader, you've not got there without building great contacts, building relationships, a strong network, incredible stories, war stories. You've done a lot, you've achieved a lot, you've seen a lot, you've made mistakes. That is what people are going to engage with online the most. And you're going to have the network online that's going to see it. Plus, if you say, I want you guys to perform a certain way and you're not prepared to do it and you don't understand it, then how is that going to ever stick? It's just not. So the firms that I work with that have absolutely nailed it, it comes from the top. The founder, the leadership team are like, we want to do this. And also, if you are heavily internally focused as a leader, you're recruiting through your people. Often they're sat with, like I said, dormant networks. They've got all these people, but they don't speak to them anymore. I was in that boat. In 2015, I got promoted to the manager of the contract division, and I had a load of people working for me. And I had about 3 or 4 that literally were trying to eat up my desk, all of my contacts, all my relationships. And I was like, phone this guy, tell him you work for me, and blah, blah, blah. And then I'd get an email or a WhatsApp from the guy going, oh, too big for me now, are you? You don't got the time to speak to us anymore. I've been promoted. I'm trying to do my new job. I can't do both. Whereas now I could do both. I could be online. I could be still engaged in the network. I could be showing the network what I'm actually doing on a daily basis. The business that I'm building, they could understand why maybe I'm not the guy that's going to pick up the phone, but I am the guy that's opening the doors so that my team can come through. Do you understand? And I'd have all the stories that keeps people engaging, and I could be like, look, my team, get onto these guys that are following me and watching me. And there's so much you can do, but it comes from the top. It absolutely comes from the top. There's also depending on the size of the business is going to be more difficult, but you've also got some people in our industry don't care how people work as long as they get the output, they like the results. As long as they're billion, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So you bring in enough money, you produce enough, do what you want. I don't typically work with those people. The clients I work with are the ones who go, this is how we want to play. Like a really cool soccer coach or whatever, who's like, this is the methodology that our team will operate within. And oftentimes that business, the leader has to show that first, then step into that seat and be part of it. The thing is, it's not that much work. It's 30 minutes a day for 3 times a week. It's not an awful lot of work. And there is AI you can do to speed things up. It's not a massively labor intensive product. I would say it's about the leader taking this seriously and then defining how they want their team to operate. But you're never going to get 100% of a big team on board at the beginning. It's not going to happen. I've tried that and it doesn't work, you know? I think you might get 20% that are really bought in, 20% that I've got no intention of ever doing anything, and the rest will want to see the 20% succeed before they step in. They're the second movers. So if I was working with a big company or a larger team, I'd say I only want a handful of your team that have got a mix of seniority and interest, ambition. They're up for it. I can then do enough with that team to show the rest of the business that this is worth investing my time in. But there'll always be maybe 20% that are just like, I'll just pick up the phone and sit in the corner.
Well, if you want a good example, you guys, I think it just last night or this morning released a top 100 recruiters list.
Yeah.
And the number one person is actually one of my friends, Mike Williams. And
yeah,
they do a few $1 million a year, and 40% of his business comes from LinkedIn posts.
Why not?
Real life example of something that you literally just shared this morning. I'm so excited. We're going to be kicking off a AI and Clay bootcamp at the end of this month. I've actually partnered with Steven from the Art of Sales Academy. You guys saw him talk at the last summit, but we are putting together a 4-week bootcamp because if you guys want a good laugh, some of these AI tools are complicated and I'm going to be sitting in the class learning along with you. But these AI tools, once you master them, they can have such a huge impact in your business. But the problem is learning the tools. So we're partnered up to put together a boot camp starting at the end of this month to help you master these tools so that way you can multiply what you have done for your recruiting business. And on top of that, I'm also going to add in a free VIP ticket for the Rock the Year Summit so that way you don't miss any of that also. So excited. Join me for the boot camp so that way we together can learn how to master these AI tools so that way it can work for you.
With the reason we did that, I have got these anecdotes of all these people that I've worked with. Atlas, who sponsor my show, that I just think are phenomenal. Again, in the AI space, they've got the data engine to be able to actually prove the data, to be able to crunch data and show the reach of people. So we were like, let's put it together. It's funny because when you look at the top 100, I think I've taught at least half of them. At least.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was like, there's some that I haven't who are just, well, I'm like, fuck me. I was pretty, because we literally just went, go and find the recruiters that are doing well to Atlas. So, that was good proof for us. And yeah, look, the money people are making is insane from this. Like, if you're doing this because you think it's a vanity project, or you're not doing this because you think it's a vanity project, then trust me, it's not. It's a revenue generating asset. It's a differentiator because it does two things. It makes your outbound easier. It doesn't replace the phone. It just means when you pick up the phone, people know you. People recognize you. It's much easier. And then when you get consistently doing that, over time, more people come inbound, more CVs, more hiring managers, more opportunities. I've got a client called Kyle Winterbottom. He's in the top 25. He does over $1 million a year, UK pounds. So 1.3 million on his own. He's got a little marketing he's got one delivery consultant and a community marketing manager next to him. Last year, he sent me a WhatsApp and it was like just on a $210,000 retainer in the US, chief data officer and a team build. And it was referred. It came to him by a client inbound who he's never heard of, didn't know. And then when he said, well, where did you hear about me? They were like, they named another client and he didn't know them either. So, referrals have always been our best business, where someone says, look, I've heard really good things about you. We're now able to do that on a completely different scale. And it'll make the physical referrals of the people more likely because they're going to keep seeing you and they're like, oh, God, you were really good at what you did. They'll come back, repeat business. And then the opportunities are endless in the market that you physically cannot get around and would have been impossible pre-LinkedIn brand building.
And I know one of the best ways to probably to answer this question might be to go look at the top 100 list that you and Atlas put together.
Yeah.
Or Hoxo and Atlas put together. But
yeah,
what kind of content actually needs to be created by recruiters?
Good question. On a very basic level, it should be a reflection of what you're talking about on the phone. I went through a phase when I first started content creation in 2017 where I spent a lot of time scratching my head thinking, what do people want to hear about? What could I write about today? And it was Gary Vaynerchuk who, his quote was, document, don't create. I think for the average salesperson, it's just a game changer because I was like, I'm already having 10 calls a day. I'm already selling this shit. I'm already having these conversations. I'm hearing the problems. So everything I'm talking about now is coming from the phone. It comes from my meetings. I'm not making this up. This comes from 500 meetings a year with recruitment leaders all over the world, right? This is real. And if you're on the phone and you're having really good conversations and you're consulting, you're advising, and you're spotting trends and challenges, that's literally the fuel of what should be coming out on LinkedIn. Because when you have a call and someone says, Ben, thanks so much for giving me those insights. Like, I didn't know that. That should go straight to LinkedIn and hit 1,000 people. Doesn't need to be more complicated. If you're a subject matter expert, don't make it more complicated than replacing, just put what you're putting on the phone out there in story format. Now, there's way more to it. There's hacks, there's structures, there's processes, there's templates, everything we've got to help people do it. And people do. What I find is that the biggest 3 problems to doing this. Number 1, ideas. People struggle with ideas. They just don't know where to start. And I always say, on a basic level, don't look at what you could be writing about. Just look at what you're already talking about. Look at your calendar. Look at what's actually happening in your desk, in your life. But then we've got some really cool processes to be able to give people to just remove that barrier. And that within a day, they can be producing content that's authentically them. But the second bit, which is really difficult, is the confidence piece. People then worry, even when they've got the idea and they've written it down, they think, what's going to happen? The first thing is we go to the negative. What's the worst case scenario? My clients might fire me because of this. My candidates will hate me and I might end up losing my job and be homeless. Like, people go to that level of negativity with it. And we are predispositioned to see the worst in things. That's just human nature. But confidence comes from, confide. To confide in someone is in others. You can't confide in yourself. Confidence comes from other people, validation. So we provide that support to our customers where we're reading their content. We're literally checking it. We're giving them the confidence that we're like, we believe this is a really good post. Like, this is going to perform well. And if it doesn't, we're there to work out why not with you. Now, you can work with my team or you can work with your own team, but oftentimes people don't have anyone that they know that has already been there. They don't. They've got no one in their recruitment business that's already proven it, and they can go, what do you think? They're just all looking at each other going, well, I don't know if it's any good. And then the third thing is time. As I said, people are already busy. People think when you don't understand the process and you don't understand the methodology, it looks big, heavy, laborious tasks. Whereas when you understand it and you're like, is that it? And you can knock out your content and all your engagement in 30 minutes, you're like, you're already spending that time on LinkedIn. You've told me you were spending it in bed. You were spending it in breakfast. You're doing it. It's already there. The post I released this morning, even though I schedule a lot of my stuff now, I wrote it in McDonald's at 6:45 a.m. after a gym session. I get a black coffee in McDonald's. It's the only place open at that time in the morning outside of my gym before I come back and do the kids stuff. I'm there on my phone just writing it out, and it all came from a conversation last night. Simple as that. It was like the conversation with a prospect was so vivid. I was just like, I just detailed out what I said.
We need to think less, do more, act, and talk to you about how to structure it.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the very basic level, it's just getting your own thoughts out and trying to be you. Don't try and be anyone else. Don't try and be ChatGPT. Try and be you. It should sound like you. I don't want to read content and then jump on a Zoom call with you and think, fucking hell, you're underwhelming. If you're not a walking encyclopedia, don't use ChatGPT to write the most intelligent content of detailed dates that you don't understand. It's about authentically representing yourself.
If you want a good laugh, I always get annoyed when I have like a before I go to bed thought, just drop it on LinkedIn and then wake up and I'm like, how did this get 50,000 impressions? What the hell?
Yeah. They're often the best. I woke up last week to a comment on my YouTube from some guy. I don't know if you saw it, and he just tore me apart. And it was like Friday morning. I found it really funny. I was just drinking a coffee, having a laugh at it. And he wrote like, I'm wearing a black t-shirt. He said, why are you dressed like a 22-year-old? He said, I had a fake beard, which I don't know what makes my beard fake. It just made
I hear you fake that.
I know. I don't know how that would work. But anyway, I took a screenshot of it, put it on LinkedIn. I was like, look, what the fuck inspires people to write these comments? Like, Christ, this is the overwhelming feeling was people on LinkedIn are pretty good. Like, we don't get that level of shite on LinkedIn. I get it on Facebook and I get it on YouTube. So I was like, thanks LinkedIn for just being a little bit more professional than this was my post. It was a bit of fun. And I had like 150,000 impressions. It was comments for days. It's still getting engagement now. And you're like, it took me about a minute, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, just to screenshot on my phone and just write my thought, bomb. Why did it resonate? It's because it's so relevant. It's so fresh. People understand it. People have been there. People feel it. And that's when you know your content's good, is when it's in other people's minds. If something's in your mind and no one else has ever thought about it, it won't fly. But when you're speaking about things that are already on front of mind and you're putting your own lens on it, that's the ingredients to fly.
I love that. Well, I want to jump over to a different topic.
Yep.
UK versus US recruiters. You've trained so many thousands of recruiters. Have you seen the differences between the two?
I mean, I'll be really honest. Most of my clients globally have been British and Irish people. So
Okay.
they're dominant. Like, we're just dominant everywhere. So even the US firms we've worked with, most of them have been like expats, Brits who buy our training. But the ones that I've dealt with and I've got relationships with, I think there's a different level of, it's just a completely different market landscape. Like, you've got so much space, the land of opportunity, so many people, and the recruiting space is so much small. It's like, there's less firms in America than there are in the UK. So we've got more recruitment businesses. We've got way less people. We're like sardines packed in a tin. And you guys are sat there like with desert acres around you. And how does that impact people's life and behaviors? And it gives, the UK recruiters are hungry. They've got to fight. They've got to literally scrap because there's so much competition. London is like the home of recruitment, right? So people in those difficult conditions, they have a different level of energy and fight for what they can achieve. And so I actually find the US is like going back in time. Like, it's like the UK was 10, 15 years ago. And even though the US is incredibly advanced from a technology and social media perspective, it's not in the recruitment space. The recruitment space is behind us. And it's about 3 huge firms in the US. And then there's all these little boutiques popping up everywhere now. And yeah, I think that the opportunity is clearly out there for, it's like the golden ticket for recruitment businesses to go and open in the US. Everyone's talking about it. It's constantly on the narrative. When it comes to the people doing the job, I don't think it's ultimately that different. I just think if you've worked in the UK, you'll have a different level of fight and different level of experience than you will in any other part of the world, I think.
And the reason why I would ask is I actually don't talk to that many people that often based in the UK.
No.
But the recruiters that I see that have moved from the UK to the US are just destroying it.
Yeah, because they've worked at a pace that they come over, like they literally come to America and they just carry on doing it. And it's like, wow. They're prepared to do things that maybe the Americans have never thought about. Australia is the same. When I started my career in Australia, and partly why I moved back to London, and it wasn't from London, but I moved to London, was just full of British recruiters saying how, the most difficult market, it's where it all started, it's where everyone comes from. I was like, I want to go and try it there. It's a bit like the Premier League in soccer, and you got the MLS, so you got the A-League, and it's like, this is where it's really the most competitive. And what that's done is it's sprouted out people to go and open all over the world, and like my clients in Dubai are British and Irish. My clients in Singapore and Thailand and Malaysia. I've got clients in Australia and New Zealand, in the US, in Canada. They're all pretty much 80% will be they originated in the UK because the markets were so tough and they perform well, and they've gone off to pastures where it's a bit easier and it's a bit more space and less competition, and they've nailed it.
That's awesome. Before we jump over to the quick fire questions, is there anything else that you want to cover about all the topics that we've bounced across?
No, I just think people who are listening, you hear a lot. It's just such a noisy space. There's so much tech, there's so much innovation. There's tools for everything. There's tools for everything. But if you're already sat on LinkedIn and you're already spending the money on the licenses and you've already got thousands of connections, before you do anything else, whether you work with me or not, that should be a huge focus. That should be a huge, huge focus. Because you want to be a business that in a couple of years, you've got serious trust online, because AI won't build trust. AI is damaging trust. You can spam 10,000 emails out today using AI and automation, and you might get 10 replies and think that was a good day. I think 9,990 people ignored you, put you into spam filters, blocked you before you've even had the opportunity to give them something valuable. So you've got an opportunity here to nurture and grow a trusted base of contacts. You've got to make the most of it.
Awesome. Well, jumping over the quick fire questions, and this is, our world's changing fast. If you had a recruiter that actually called you up, asked you a question, they are just entering our industry in 2025. They're like, hey, you've talked to thousands of recruiters. What can I do to succeed as a recruiter in this space? What advice would you give me?
Do less better. So be hyper niche. Like, if you really want to succeed, I think You want to be the guy that knows everyone in a micro niche. Like, you want to be so well connected in one space. And the people that think they're casting the net wide by doing multiple facets, that's just not going to fly in the future. Like, you'd rather be the absolute master in one discipline. You recruit one type of person on an ongoing basis, and you become famous for that. And yeah, you're going to turn other business down, and there's going to be some customers that might not want to work with you because of it, because you only do one thing. But realistically, people respect people that high perform, and the only way you're going to high perform is if you just focus in one area.
And the same question, but for somebody that's been in the game 5, 10, 25 years, like, world's changing. I want to keep on crushing it. What advice would you give me?
If you're in the game for 20 years or whatever, then you've obviously got a viewpoint into the future for yourself. You think, what do I want from my life? Have I got a wife, kids, husband? Where am I going? And I think you should be building your business and your career around where you want to go and what you want to, like, how you want to live. Because I think when you get to a certain point, how you make your money is equally as important as how much. If I'm 20 years in the game and you tell me cold call for 12 hours a day and I'll make $1 million a year, I just still wouldn't do it. I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to wake up and do that at this age. I've done all that shit. I've tested all the things, So I think when you've been in the game longer, it's about how do you want to work and what impact will that have on your life, the goals that because I see so many recruitment business owners who think they need to scale huge teams to be successful. And they don't. When you break it down, they just want to put a certain amount of money away so they're financially free in 5 to 10 years. And I'm like, it's actually quicker to get there if you don't have the headcount. If you just invest the cash that you make through your billings wisely, maybe have a couple of people around you that make things slicker, you could get so much more money out the other end. But they don't know that. They just hear all these exit stories and these growth strategies and scale. It's a trap. For some people, it's the right way. They're built for it. But I look at my life and I'm like, I wake up every single day and I do the school run. I'm there for breakfast. I've got a young baby. I've got 2 stepkids. I want to be there at night. I want to be in their lives. And if I have a remote business where we meet quarterly, I have clients all over the world, I host events, I do these really cool things, but 80% of my time, I'm in this house, I'm with my family. I've built it around what I want. Does that make sense? I've really consciously thought about my wife and the impact that it'll have on her and the kids and the relationships I want to build. And all these things are important to me, as important as how much money I make. Because at the end of it, I'm not going to go, oh, fuck, I was loaded, but I lost them all the people that matter. Like, it doesn't make sense.
I love that because it's, as I've gotten older and now I have a kid, it's like the definition of success changes.
Of course, 100%. Like, you want to provide a great life for your family. I'm sure we all do. But some people are comfortable sacrificing, 4 days a week in a different city, working over stupid hours, taking clients out, staying in hotels, whatever, building this huge team to one day exit. And if you want to do that, great, but you don't have to. You don't. And I think for the older generation, I enjoy these conversations. I enjoy helping people because I have 2 levels to my service, right? I have the training that's 7,000, but then I actually consult with like 45 businesses right now where they're in a community, they work together, we meet, we have events. I am like an advisor on a brand perspective, and we go real deep with these people. And most of my customers, when you actually scratch away, they really do want to build a job and a business that they love going to work. They love it. They wake up energized. They want to be in it for 10 years. They don't want to rush, build something, exit, and they don't even know what they'd do if they did.
Well, has there been a book that's had a huge impact on your career?
Yeah, 2. So there's The Compound Effect by a guy called Darren Hardy I read when I first started my business, and that talks about the small little daily actions and the impact they have over time. And, that's how I see all of my success has been through, I think, consistency to date. I'm not the best guy at anything, but I'm one of the most consistent guys at everything I do. And recently I read a book called Essentialism. I think Greg McEwen, I think, was the author. And that's about doing less better. That's about saying, you could be doing 3 or 4 things and moving the needle slightly each year, or you could narrow it to 1, maximum 2 things and move them substantially. And that was when I told you I had that agency business, I had this training business, I had all these different products. We were doing so many different things. And now it's like, zoom, and everything's focused in one area. And it's had the biggest impact on. And now I look at everything in my life and I'm like, do I really need to do that? Do I really want to do that? I'm trying to get rid of things. I'm always trying to get rid of things. Essentialism. What's the most essential things to give me what I want?
Looking at tech tools, is there a tech tool that's absolutely essential for you?
A Fathom AI I use for all my calls. Incredible. Like literally every single meeting I have, Fathom's in the background. It collates the information. It summarizes it. It gives me the notes. I was always typing in meetings and writing notes and, and then the admin around sending proposals and all the things that go out after, especially in recruitment, admin putting it in a CRM. Now it's one click, it's in. It's just Fathom for me is incredible. I know there's other products like MetaView and Cloud Call. There's always tools that do the same thing in recruitment, but an Atlas CRM I don't use, but I think they're incredible. That I did the top 100 with. They've built that into their CRM. They're like the most forward-thinking CRM in the world, I believe, and that's why I partner with them. I love leaning on my voice. I love leaning into conversation. The bit I don't enjoy is the documentation. Like I think all recruiters typically go down that route, right? So the more we can remove that shit, the better.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you were a top biller before you launched your company.
Mm-hmm.
Your company is crushing it. You have a great podcast, the RAG podcast, what should subscribe to and check it out. But you've been successful in so many things. Like at your core, like what do you think is driving you to keep on hitting all that success over and over and over again?
I think probably is fear of failure more than achievement. So if you look at recruitment, I think especially in the UK, is like you built in like everyone else is on this. So if you get a vacancy, so have 5 other agencies. Everything you've got could come crashing down. Even when I built a big contractor book and I was earning £250,000 a year as a 26-year-old recruiter in London, that could come crashing down at any time. There could be one project that gets cut and 5 contractors are gone. People could be headhunting your contractors into different teams. So I've always felt like nothing is stable, nothing has legs. So I'm always like, I love the growth. The growth comes from doing the same things and keep innovating. But I would say my primary objective is to survive. Still, it's to survive and thrive and make sure I maintain and I'm there and I'm in the game. My fear is people forget who I am. People forget what we're doing. People, someone else has got the voice. Someone else has got the ear of the market. That's probably what keeps me going. And then in my personal life, it's probably similar. It's like, I stopped drinking alcohol. I go into ice baths every day now. I'm not like a complete lunatic who wakes up at like 4 a.m. and eats raw eggs or anything, but I am in the gym. I am doing cold therapy. I don't drink alcohol. I've really switched up what I'm eating. My whole family, we eat really good food. And I'm like, longevity is really important to me. I really want to be here. Like my daughter is 15, 16 months old. She's incredible. I'm nearly 40 in 2 years' time. Like I'm older than my mum and dad were when I was that age, a lot older. I'm like 10 years older. So when she's my age, I'm going to be in my mid 70s. I want to be fit and healthy. I want to be there for her kids. Like I'm already thinking those things through. So there's a little bit of fear there, that things can go wrong and I'm not in control of everything, but it's probably the same. Everything's about, could it come crashing down if I don't perform my best? That's kind of, I think, underlying all of my behavior, which might be negative for some people, but it tends to work for me.
That kind of goes to the next question. Like, with everything that you've done, like in recruiting and also running a business, you have weeks that are just, excuse my language, just fucking hell. How do you get through those weeks and just keep on going?
Even now, I still feel it. I think emotion, I try and run my business on logic and not emotion, but that's easier said than done. But it does get easier with time and experience. When you've got to understand data, you've got to understand the metrics early. So like when I was a recruiter, one thing we were really good at was understanding the data. I knew my ratios. I knew how many vacancies I needed a month to spit out 10 contract deals a month. Like I knew that. I knew I needed 1 in 4. If we got 40 vacancies a month, we would do 10 deals. Like we just did. And we did it. But I could see that and I could see icebergs coming ahead. So there was not that many surprises. It was always data driven. And I'm the same now in my business. So I think I do a lot, again, about panicking about changes in the horizon. I feel a lot of emotion based on things that haven't even happened. When it actually gets to the point of things dropping, I'm pissed off because I predicted it was going to happen. But the best way I deal with it is I talk. I have a coach who I speak to on a bi-weekly basis. I speak to my business partner. I speak to my wife. I write everything down. Like I'm constantly I have a journal every day, just in my iPhone, where I write down, I've got like 5 questions I ask myself every day, and I answer them every day. I use ChatGPT a lot now as a coach as well. So I don't know if you use any of those tools to like, I just speak to it. I literally ask it to be a high performance coach for entrepreneurs. And then I start talking, and it literally talks back, and it's incredible. And I use it for, even this morning, I was, bouncing a few ideas off it. I use the tools at my disposal. I'm not afraid to ask for help. I'm not too proud to admit when I'm struggling, but I'm also not as trigger happy with the emotions as I used to be. I'm trying to see that the data will tell me a bigger picture.
What are a few of the questions that you ask yourself each day?
I'll get them up. So literally, I ask myself, what have you been doing since the last journal entry? So I give a bit of a diary of the day before, or sometimes I miss a day. I put this morning, I've done the following so far. So I'll always be writing in there before midday. So I'll usually have a little recap of what time I woke up and what I've been up to. What does the day look like for the rest of the day? So that's when I'll think about what I want to achieve for the rest of the day. How am I feeling right now? Which usually makes the bulk of the journal. It's where I talk about my emotions. Am I stressed? Am I happy? Am I feeling whatever? And then I finish with what am I grateful for? And I try and always put 3 to 5 things that I'm grateful for. I've been doing that for about 12 months on a daily basis. I made that up. Like, it just seems to work for me. At first I was just writing, and it felt really loose, and it just didn't. Now I've got a structure I follow. I need process in all areas. I think once you got framework, there's freedom in a framework. Without the framework, it's like my content stuff. Going to LinkedIn with no framework, I think, is dangerous. When you've got a framework, you've got freedom to move.
Well, and this next question I'm going to ask 2 ways. It's going to be at the very beginning of your recruiting career, but also kind of like the beginning box out.
Yep.
If you can go back in time with all the knowledge that you have, all the success you've had, all the hard freaking days, the weeks, those losses, everything, and give yourself advice in your first recruiting job, say a month or 2 in, what would you tell yourself?
You are incredibly valuable to the people that you serve. So like, I think as a junior recruiter, you don't really understand the value that you offer. Like, you don't really get I know running a business now, the impact of great people. Like, having the right person in the right seat is everything. When you've got the wrong person, everything else you're trying to achieve is on the slide, Equally, recruitment, finding the right job is one of the top 3 decisions we make. If you're in the wrong role, everything else in your life can be affected, It's so difficult. So I think we put people on a pedestal in the early days of recruitment. We look up at customers, maybe not candidates, but we definitely look up at customers. And I just would be like, look, you've got to, again, this is why you have to go micro niche, because you have to understand the niche well enough to be able to confidently display and explain the value that you can offer to someone. But you can be like, look, it's so mutually beneficial to know each other. Like, I say to people, I operate in this space exclusively every single day, and I've got nothing for you right now. I've got literally no vacancies for you right now, but I guarantee I will. I guarantee I'm going to be useful to you in the future of your career. So investing some time knowing me now is going to benefit us both down the line. But that didn't come in day 1. That came in year 5, year 4. I wish I could display that level of confidence earlier. It's not going to come on day 1, but if you've got the right niche, you can do that really, really quick. It's funny. I was literally on a train from London back to where I live in the north of England last week. Bearing in mind, I finished recruiting in 2017, and I didn't really do a deal properly. I wasn't filling roles in 2016. So 2015, one of the final people I ever placed in a job was a candidate who I'd worked hard for like 3 years to get him a job. Like, he was one of the best in the market on a contract basis. He had such good reviews. I knew if I got him in front of a client, he'd get the job. Like, everyone was like, he's just amazing. And I never got the right time. I never got the right vacancy for him. And he was really selective, but I worked him. I met him for beers. I met him for lunches. I even lived locally. We went to the football. We did all these cool things. And in 2015, one of the final things I did is I found him a job. And it was the right role at the right time. I'm having a coffee waiting for my train. And this guy comes into the coffee shop and he's like, wow, Sean. And so we got talking. He was getting on my train, getting off a couple of stops before. So we had an hour. We sat together for an hour. And it was incredible. And he was telling me that recruiters don't do it anymore. They don't meet him. They don't ask the same questions. They don't buy him those beers and the lunches, and they don't try and build that human relationship that we've got. And to this day, we'd still class each other as friends. And he's still at the company I placed him at. He went permanent. He had a bit of a sabbatical. He went to Romania. He came back to UK. He's there now in a big role. And he's like, not only did you nurture that relationship to the point where I enjoyed working with you, but you found me an amazing job that I'm still in 10 years later. So the impact you have on people is incredible. if you see it that way.
Same question, but looking at the very beginning of your days at Hoxo, what advice would you give yourself?
Do less better. So, but again, I didn't know enough to be able to, I had to kind of do a lot of different things to find my way. But I probably thought I needed to offer more services and that would be more valuable. I think a lot of people think the more I can offer, the more valuable it is. Like even my first training program was 16 modules, 16 weeks. I threw everything I knew at people. People bought it. Some people loved it. Most people said it's great, but actually 30% of it was amazing. And the rest I probably don't even need to know. Like I'm not going to be able to do all this stuff. It's too advanced. It's too much. So all I've been doing is stripping back. Now is 6 weeks. I was doing 11 groups a week at the time. Now I do 4 a year and I make 10x the revenue that I was making then. So do less, do it better, have an amazing tight product suite, be the best. That's what I would say to myself and anyone listening is like, do you know Gordon Ramsay, Chef Ramsay in the US when he goes out there, yeah? And his kitchen nightmares is all over. It started in the UK, obviously went to America, but what does he do in every restaurant? He goes in, he looks at this big ugly menu and he cuts it down to a handful of dishes that they can execute incredibly well every time. And to me, there's no different to what I'm doing, what you're doing, recruitment, marketing, any business that we think that suites of services are more attractive. But what we do is we blind people. We make things more confusing. It's difficult to market the services. It's difficult to execute them all at the same standard. So do less better.
Love that. Well, and you've had 7,000 people go through your training program.
Yeah.
But in that, you've talked to tens and thousands of recruiters over the years.
Yeah.
I'm sure you get asked constantly, tactical questions. How do I make more money? How do I do BD better? How do I fix my LinkedIn? But is there a question that you wish a recruiter would actually ask you? And what would be that answer?
I think if it was relating to like LinkedIn and brand, I'd like them to ask me like, what's it like a year or two down the line? Because I've done it. I've already got to that point. I know what's on the other side of the work. I know. I've felt it. I've experienced it and it's incredible. So I'd like people they think very short term. Most people think, if I do this next week, will I get money from it? Whereas I'm like, we can give you some tactics that are going to change the game in 7 days. Like you're going to see results, but the real benefit is 12 to 18 months, 24 months down the line. That's when it gets real fun. And I wish people would think that way when they don't. But I'd say the same about recruitment ownership as well. Like I've interviewed over 375 guests on my show internationally. I get 30,000 downloads a month to the rag. And what I'm trying to do with my show is help recruitment founders exclusively build a business that suits them. So I interview people from any way they can build a recruitment company. If it's an interesting model, I'm keen on hearing about it so that people can go, I'll take a bit of that. I'll take a bit of that and find what works for them. And I wish people would ask like that question. How do I build what's right for me? As opposed to how do I build the biggest business? How do I build the fastest growing, most revenue generating business? They should be asking, how do I build what's going to give me sustainable value, sustainable fulfillment, that's linked to my life in general, not just what metrics the world thinks are success.
I absolutely love that. Well, before I let you go, I know the easy answer for this, but for those listening, how they go about following you?
I don't have a connection ability anymore. I'm at that 30,000 connection mark. So there's probably no point in trying to connect, but please follow me. And, you can always drop me an email at sean@hoxomedia.com. I think Instagram, I'm Sean Anderson Hoxo, and the same on TikTok. So I'm not as prevalent on those platforms, but I'm present on there. So if you really want to get hold of me quickly, you could probably get me faster by just messaging me on one of them. Yeah, following me, drop me an email, see me on any of those platforms.
And before I let you go, is there anything else you want to share with the listeners?
I've actually got, if you're open to it, I've got something called the free 7-day challenge, which I've launched in January this year. I've taken all my paid stuff and created a really light, practical 7-day challenge for 2025. It's completely free. Anyone can take it. And in a week, I'll give you a really valuable process to follow. Like it's not the finished article that I would, if you pay me, but it's enough to get you to the next level on LinkedIn. It's enough to get you engaging with people, building content out and following up and making some cash off it. So I'll give you the link to put in the show notes. But yeah, I hope people take it. It's completely free. And I'll see you on the other side of that because obviously I've done all the video content. I'm in the community. You can ask me questions there as well.
Awesome. Well, I'll put that in the show notes, so definitely check that out. But I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. And I know you've talked to thousands and thousands of recruiters. So you got a good picture of how the environment's changing, how the market is changing, the impacts of artificial intelligence, but really just how recruiters can get out of their own freaking way. Bust those myths that we've been holding on to.
Yeah.
So I really think 2025 is going to be, for you listening, the year of personal abundance. So let's go make that happen. Thank you, guys.